Welcome to this video. I am taking a look at a topic that I think needs lots of emphasis and revision according to context, and context can be very broad with this, but basically it's the reliable denial that I've spoken about it on a number of occasions, where a person tells us in a certain pattern of language that they didn't do what they're accused of. And so we look for the presence, the psychological presence through the pronoun I. We look for a past tense commitment because it's a past tense event. And we look for the allegation itself to be not avoided, but directly addressed. And we look for those three things to be present, and not more, not less. But the context can be very complicated, and that's where analysts must be careful. That's where the benefit of working with others comes in strongly, as there is debate back and forth and further exploration of a context. For example, if you were accused of something that took place long ago, but no dating assigned to it, you don't know when it took place, and you literally don't know, you might use the word never. So it's not a reliable denial, but it may not be unreliable. It may be true the person never did that. What we look for is what I call I'll put the screen here for you, the psychological wall of truth. And after many, many interviews from years ago, I tagged that name, the psychological wall of truth. And what that means is this, is that if a person is accused of something that they didn't do, there should be no connection to it. There's no reality that their mind has to struggle with. And so they will plainly say, I didn't do, and then fill in the blank with whatever it is. So let's say I use an example in trainings where during break, after break, I come back and I say, my wallet is missing. Someone stole my wallet. And I ask the officers, what would you say if I accused you of stealing my wallet? And many respond with, I didn't steal your wallet, which is parroting, so I've got to be careful with that. And there's a way to word things properly in what we consider a more engaging type, where the accusation can be stated. We do avoid morally charged language. We talk about being accused. And there's ways of getting someone to speak for themselves. But basically, when someone says, Peter, I didn't take your wallet. And notice take is different than steal. Take covers a broader amount. Steal is something that's morally charged. I didn't take your wallet. It's right on its surface. It is a reliable denial. And so we're looking at a high percentage likeliness that it is true. The person did not take my wallet. And then we go on from there, and we can ask, why should you be believed, and that sort of thing. And it can end very quickly, the reliable denial. So one of the things that I like to do is talk about the psychological wall of truth. It's that since I didn't take your wallet, there's no connection between me and taking or stealing your wallet, because I didn't do it. So I might struggle a little bit with different language because I don't have that connection in my brain. Now, this is where it gets complicated. Someone may not have taken my wallet, but they are thieves. They steal in different ways. And so it begins to get a little bit convoluted as they look to make denials about something else. And maybe they didn't do that, but it's close. They did it yesterday. And so context is always going to be key. And then as years pass, it becomes even more so. One of the practices I have is I peruse headlines for the word denial in any form. And this is not a recommendation of different mainstream media outlets or anything like that. This is just what I do as I look for it, and I advise those in study to do the same, is just peruse the headlines. It doesn't matter what the topic is. So-and-so denies something. Go into it and find out what you're going to see. And generally speaking, I'll get an email sometimes weeks later where people are amazed about how the media brings forth this denial, which is not a denial. And so I'd like to focus on that a very specific type of unreliable denial. And this is, I think, very interesting. So this morning, two news stories came out. One is Jerry Sandusky. He's the former Penn State coach. He's a convicted child molester. He's not spoken publicly about his charges or appeals since 2013. And at age 80, he finally began to speak out. And what he told us is quite pregnant with much new information that we may not have seen. He's giving us insight, as the headlines say. He denies it. But there was another one this morning that I saw, and some celebrity denies using Ozempic. Ozempic is the type 2 diabetes injection, which is to lower their blood glucose level. And as people have found, you bring down your insulin levels and you lose weight. And it's not without its side effects, which have made much more in the news of late, the last few months, of some pretty serious side effects. So that's been in the news a lot, Ozempic. But it's very popular among celebrities, and then, of course, people that follow celebrities. So I leave out the name of the celebrity here. I had not heard of her before this, but she had just given birth a few months ago and now was taking selfies of her very thin, lean body. And so people were making comments and saying, because she posted for that reason. And usually people get onto something, the celebrities will post something, and then when people don't agree with them, they'll say, I need my privacy. So it's quite superficial and holds little interest to me except in the language. So I do recommend that you look through headlines where you see the word denial in any form, just jump on it and take a look at it. And as comments came in, you see a lot of the comments don't even conjugate verbs. It's a kind of a newspeak. And someone, of course, brought up Ozempic. And the headline was talking about how she denied using Ozempic. And so let's take a look at this denial. Comments like this are so funny to me. I know a lot of people take Ozempic, and that's totally fine. To each their own. But don't discredit people who also work very hard to get their body back, like I've done with mine. Getting back to work forced me to focus on my health and working out, and I want to feel confident and good about myself. So the first question that we ask is, did she deny using Ozempic? And she didn't. And this, I think, is very interesting if you consider what she's doing here, because it is pretty common that people that are deceiving will do this. What she's expanding upon is very similar to the crowdsourcing of guilt. So we first notice she does not say, I didn't use Ozempic. That would be something that would be very strong. I didn't use Ozempic. I don't think it's wrong that people use it, whatever, the moralism that comes in with that. She could say that. I know a lot of people take it, and that's totally fine. Great. But I didn't use Ozempic. Comments like this are so funny to me. So she ridicules this one question and then labels it as comments plural. and she's mocking it. And you ask contextually, is a celebrity using Ozempic something funny? Something so bizarre and so unusual that it would be worthy of ridicule? No, it's very popular. It's so popular that people with type 2 diabetes complain they can't always get it because it's being bought up by celebrities. So comments like this are so funny to me. So the first thing we do is we recognize there is no denial in this, but there is a need to ridicule that which probably contextually doesn't need ridicule. It's not absurd. I know a lot of people take Ozempic, and that's totally fine. So now we have a linguistic disposition towards those who use Ozempic, which is positive by the person who's not denying using it. And we have a crowd with a lot of people. And she knows this. So it's not just fine, but it's totally fine. She has a positive linguistic disposition towards it while she's not denying it. To each their own. But don't discredit me because I worked very hard to get my body back like I've done with mine. She's not saying that. She goes, and this is called a diversion. She's bringing your attention away from herself and denying it and kind of spreading it out there. Now she moves into the lecture. So rather than denial, she's going to lecture. Don't discredit people who also work very hard. So this is not me. And this is additional. That's another commentary of different people who work very hard, present tense, to get their body back. And at the end, like I've done, not I did, but I've done with mine. So she's not denying it. She's giving a positive linguistic disposition towards the drug. And now she wants to give a lecture to someone that said, hey, you're using Ozempic. Getting back to work forced me to focus on my health and working out and hear what this is. And I wanted to feel confident and good about myself. This is the reason why she worked out, and she wants them to know the reason. But a Hollywood celebrity or whatever realm she's in, would you ever need to ask them, well, why did you want to get back to health? Or why did you want to focus on your health? Why did you start work? People don't ask those type questions. That's obvious. But she feels the need to explain, and this is contextually unnecessary information. So we have this unreliable denial. We have a positive, we don't have a denial, making it unreliable. We don't have a denial. So she refuses to deny. She has a positive view of it. She's psychologically hiding within a crowd, and then giving an explanation as to why to a question no one would have asked. So that's what it looks like when someone is trying to deceive by moving the focus away from the accusation. This is not, I didn't take your wallet. This is, let me give you a lecture on money, which would move it away from the accusation. So that there's an unreliable denial of someone that has a need to persuade and obvious deception. So let me go to then the next one, Jerry Sandusky. So the story with him, for those that are not familiar with it, he was found guilty in 2012 of 45 counts of sexual abuse of 10 boys he met at his Second Mile charity, which allegedly took place over a period of 15 years from 1994 to 2009. If you remember, there was all sorts of accusations about cover-ups with the school. He and his wife had adopted children. One of them ended up accusing him of years of molestation. And so we're now able to hear what he says for himself. And even after a decade in prison, so you ask yourself, if you didn't do it, what would you say? I didn't molest the boys. And there's this psychological wall of truth. I don't have a connection to it. His answer, his denial, gives us much information to work from. And I hope the screen is large enough everyone can see this. I never, ever in my life ever thought about molesting anybody. So he doesn't say I did not molest these boys. I never, ever in my life ever thought about it. So we have never, which I'm not willing to take never and say, oh, that's definitely deceptive, because it's over a long period of time. But then we have the emphasis with never, ever. And then we have another one, ever. And watch how bad this gets. I never, ever in my life molested anybody. It's not what he says. He minimizes the action into a thought. And this is actually classical language of an abuser, of a sexual abuser. Michael Jackson never harmed any children. I've loved children all around the world. So they often will take the accusation and avoid it. Avoid it. So never, which is not reliable, because we do have specific time periods for him to look back on, and he's had, I think, 12 years now incarcerated to think about these things. Never, ever, ever. So now we're taking this way too far. The need to persuade us, the need to grant emphasis to this denial is too much. But he goes to thought about, okay? And I would say that if he was wrongly accused, he's thought about it for the last 12 years sitting in prison, wrongfully convicted. He's probably thought about little else. And so this is a deceptive statement. Even when he was accused with it, it would be a time to answer it, that sort of thing. And here we hope that he'll give us more. Instead, he tells us about what happened. I was accused of molesting children, no, of heinous crimes which I've never committed. He did not commit, in his perception of reality, heinous crimes. And this is also consistent with those who minimize, justify, will give a rationalization for what they've done. They weren't heinous crimes. He's going to tell us what it was, which I've never committed. So he's not denying molestation, but heinous crimes. My wife was my only partner in sex, and that was after marriage. And there it is. This is something I've heard many times over the years, including in child protective interviews. We call this the normalization or the normal factor. See, I couldn't have done it because I am a normal male. What kept me from doing this is having sex with my wife. You see, he's bringing a connection to those boys. My wife was my only partner in sex. And this is why he didn't commit heinous crimes, is because in his perception, in his warped, predatory perception of reality, those boys were his partners. That's what makes this sentence, but especially this word here, so damning. He avoids giving a reliable denial. He changes the language. He minimizes extreme minimization. If you're accused falsely of something, you really can't stop thinking about that. This is insane. I have no connection with that. And so you have that type of upfront boldness, which he never had, even back then, to issue that denial. So this is unreliable, and it is deceptive. That's my conclusion here. Never, ever, ever. And then thought. And this is very similar to someone that is warping or changing the perception of reality to let us into his world. He's telling us, he's actually victim blaming, telling us the boys partnered or were willing to engage in sexual acts as partners, a frightening word. And here, the sex he had was only after marriage and perhaps after the adoptions, that sort of thing. But he has the need right here to portray himself as the good guy, telling us that he is not. And so he is now 80 years old. He has not come to the truth of what he's done. He goes after, and you can look at it yourself in the article there, or simply search on it. That's something that goes through AP, and all newspapers have it. He says, I was in disbelief in terms of how this happened. Why were they, the accusers, saying things that were so inconsistent with what they had said before? Then he said this, and I'm going to put this one out for you to take a look at. I believe I was wrongfully convicted. Okay. And just so I'm a little bit consistent here, and you see what I'm doing. This is just for my own eye's sake on how I do things, but so I want to highlight the word partner, and then I want to highlight the word believe. The word believe is a weak assertion, and what we do with weak assertions is we look to see if they are appropriately weak or inappropriately weak. He doesn't say I was wrongfully convicted. It's only a belief which allows you, the audience, me, the audience, it allows us to believe to the contrary, to believe something else. So if I say I believe I locked my keys in the car, I'm telling you that my assertion is weak. And if I don't know if I locked my keys in the car, it's appropriate weakness. It's a weak assertion, but it's appropriate. It's contextually appropriate. He only believes he was wrongfully convicted. He doesn't know that he was. And he doesn't state plainly, I was wrongfully convicted. How is that? Because I didn't molest them. I didn't touch them sexually. However you want to word it, I didn't do that. And I've been here for 12 years wrongfully, and that's just not true. Not true. So the lesson for today is to look for the reliable denial, look for the psychological presence, look for the past tense commitment, look for the address of the specific allegation, and then listen for when you don't hear it and what else they throw at you. So he went on to talk about the motive of those that testified against him and any changes and that sort of thing. And when kids are molested, they do change their stories a lot. the trauma can really impact their language and bring us to a place of dissociation, which is difficult to pick up in language, but it can be with careful study. He will not stand behind a psychological wall of truth that I've been wrongfully convicted. And what we say about this, the same thing we say about the silly one with Ozempic or whatever it is, because it's a study of language, not of people, is both refuse to deny what they're accused of, both move into a tangential portion of an account to take your attention away from the allegation. So the allegation is such that I want to go into my marriage. You see, I'm normal, which many of you know from other videos. When someone has a need to present in any wording that they're normal, they have been considered or consider themselves abnormal in the past. And I think that's the case with Sandusky. So thank you for joining, and hopefully I'll have another one soon for you.